I'm headed down Highway 83. We just pulled out of Washburn, North Dakota. We're headed south towards Bismarck, but I'm going to go off on a side road here, which I misidentified at the end of my previous video. My previous video, I called this 1806. This is actually Highway 1804, which goes along the east shore of the Missouri River. You'll see flashes of the Missouri River in this video, but it's actually not as close to it as I hoped it was, at least in this part. I do know that elsewhere in the state it does get a bit closer to it, which is a drive I'd like to take again because there's some places I want to photograph, but not today. I used to live in this area in a little town called Turtle Lake, and honestly, the whole time I lived there, I never drove down this road, so I was very disappointed by that when I moved away, so yeah, I had the chance to drive down it, so I did. You know, it's basically rolling farm country. It's nothing amazingly gorgeous. It's just kind of nice. My dash cam isn't the best camera for picking up this countryside, but it is the tool I have. So we will go with it. And I was actually just listening to a video today that was talking about the legality of these dash cams. You know, and apparently in some states you can't use a dash cam that's suction cupped to your windshield, which mine is. Even though I put it behind the mirror, it is suction cupped. So who knows? I may be breaking North Dakota or South Dakota law. I just do not know. So I should probably research that a little bit. But anyway, whether I'm breaking the law or not, I wanted to talk a little bit about listening. My last video, I spent a lot of time talking about how to change somebody's mind. And I mentioned several times that at the side of my arguments, I had the word listen written in big capital letters. I wanted to develop the listening side of it. And listening, by the way, is not just important for changing people's minds, it's just part of conversing with somebody. Now, you and I are not in the same room. I don't really have a mental picture of who I'm talking to because I know that there's quite a diverse group that listens to this. Now, if I'm responding to one of your comments, I know who I'm talking to, at least generally. But right now, recording this, I don't have anyone in particular in mind. You may be doing what I do during some of these videos, because I watch videos like this. Maybe you're mopping your living room floor. Maybe you're cooking supper. Maybe you're laying in bed, you want to go to sleep, but you can't, so you put on something that'll knock you out, like Xanax or something. I don't know what you're doing. Maybe you're a teacher and you're correcting tests and you have this on as background noise. You may be hearing this, but not actually listening to it. So let me tell you the difference, and then I want to get more into the listening part of it. Listening is an active process. The only way you're going to stop these sound waves from hitting your eardrums is if you cover your ears, you turn the video off, or you go somewhere else. So you can't help but hear it. I just heard somebody with a really loud car out on the highway. Oh, they're getting closer now, yay. Oh, look, they just drove down my street, so they're even closer than I thought they were. Go get them with your little blue truck. Anyway, you know, I heard it. I guess I took, but you notice I went further. I took an active role and I said, well, where is the truck? Oh, there it is. It's blue. It's a Chevrolet. It's an older Chevrolet. And I actually kind of figured out who it is. But my point, because I have one, that's active. The sound of the engine hitting my eardrums, that's passive. So if we're going to listen, you owe that to the people you're talking to. Whether you're trying to change your mind or whether you are just spending time with them talking. Now, I think we all know those people that just talk and talk and talk and talk. And some of them it's like, why use 10 words when you can use 100? And then we've known those people that just can monologue for hours. And you're just like, oh my God, just stop. You know, some of those people that are just not efficient with their words, you put up with. The monologuers, yeah, the attention's gone, totally gone, and you're just like, wow. But So I'm not talking about those situations. I'm talking about where you're actually conversing with somebody. So let's say you're me, you're out on a date, and your date looks over at a neighboring table and she says, "Oh my gosh, that's so disgusting. Look at those two men kissing." Now, you could react in a number of different ways. You could say, "How could you be so bigoted? What's wrong with two men kissing?" You could be like, "Yeah, it's kind of gross when two men kiss." Or maybe you could probe a little bit deeper. You could say, "Why do you call that gross?" And she may say something like, "Well, it's just not natural for two men to kiss." She may say something like, "Well, I just don't like seeing people kiss in public. That's something done in private." We've got two totally different situations there, don't we? One is a little bit of homophobia. The other one is more about, "Oh, I don't like physical affection in public." And I think we all have a line somewhere about physical affection in public. I'm not too weirded out by a quick peck on the cheek or even a quick peck on the lips. When I start seeing tongue or making out in public, I'm just kind of like, ew. Other people, they don't get grossed out till the clothes start coming off. And there's room there for some discussion about what's appropriate. Why do you think that's appropriate? But for the sake of my discussion here, I want to just say, you didn't know till you asked. And that's why I say it's important to listen. And listening is active. Rather than you fill in the gaps and wait to pounce, why not get it in their own words? Right there, we've just narrowly escaped calling the girlfriend a bigot when she wasn't. She's just uncomfortable seeing people making out in public. So when you listen, listening is not, "I can't wait till they're done talking so I can tell them what I think." Listening is not getting ready to attack them. Listening is not being silent while it's their turn. Listening is an actual active process. And part of what you may have to do is you may have to paraphrase to them. You may have to restate their argument, make sure you understand it. You may ask questions about it. Like in my example, the question saved that date. It may be a matter of vocabulary in some cases. Somebody says, "I just don't believe in evolution." Well, what do you mean by evolution? Well, I mean, seriously, how could a planet just be created out of nothing? There you go. Now you found out that, they're not actually talking about evolution. Well, now we can have a better conversation rather than when we're at cross purposes, because they think evolution is all of it, and you say, no, evolution is a species turning into a species. And that vocabulary is actually really important. I give you an example. What's his name? Ray Comfort has some kind of a video out on evolution. And what he does for a lot of his videos, he goes around interviewing a lot of people and asking their opinions on evolution. If you've ever watched one of his videos, what he will do, it's kind of like Man in the Street, but he'll jump from person to person and back to this person and over to this person. And you don't really get to develop one argument with that person, which makes it very hard to watch. Because then you can't really follow through that one argument and say, okay, are they actually making sense here? Is he making sense? Makes it very hard. But I suppose that's his technique, and that's why he does it that way. But anyway, I remember one of the people he's talking to in that video, he talks about one kind turning into another kind. And if you've read your Bible, you know that the Bible talks about kinds. Well, this person asks him what he means by a kind. And he says, well, there's the dog, and I'm paraphrasing, but there's the dog kind, the bird kind, the cat kind. And, the person he's talking to didn't really press him on it the way I wish they would have, because that's not a definition. What's a dog kind? What's a bird kind? I mean, that means absolutely nothing. There's no scientific basis behind it. Is a bat a bird, or is it a dog, or is it a cat, or is it something else? What do you mean by kind, Mr. Comfort? And that would have been really valuable part of that discussion, because then we can communicate using the same language. So I would say listening, an important piece of it is the vocabulary. Do the words mean what we think they mean? Restating an argument, sometimes that's really good because you've totally misunderstood what they're saying. So if you restate it, then they're like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. Or sometimes they misspoke. I mean, have you ever misspoken? I know I have. I've got them on video. Last week I called this road here Highway 1806. It's not. Highway 1806 is on the western side of the Missouri River, and by the way, apparently is open now. Yeah, that's where the DAPL protests were, much further south than this. But anyway, that listening is an active process. Another piece behind listening is knowing how to pause. If I say to my girlfriend, well, why do you think it's gross that they're kissing? And she's like, let her have that, Give her that time to figure it out. She may have just, spouted a stupid comment off and not even really been thinking about it. And she needs time to think about it. And that's part of the conversation, those pauses. They always tell us as teachers, when you ask a question, pause. Give the kids a chance to figure out an answer. And, she may have to pause and think, well, wait a second. I guess I was a little uncomfortable because it's two men and I'm not used to that. But the real thing is I just hate seeing people kiss in public. Now, she's probably not going to say all that to you, but, you've given her a chance to reflect on it. When people ask you questions, can you immediately spout off an answer? Now, what do you think Donald Trump should do about health care? Yeah, there's a lot to that. If you're going to ask a question, make it a clear question and make it one that can actually be answered in a reasonable amount of time. And since we're talking about, whoops, I just slopped water all down the front of my shirt. Thank goodness it's water. If we're going to be talking about questions, there is a right and a wrong way to ask a question. If you're going to throw insults in, or if you're going to come off as interrogating, or if you're going to ask leading questions. I've got a survey laying here that I've been tempted to do a YouTube video on just because the questions are so leading. Do you believe, as most Americans do, that the Second Amendment means an individual right to bear arms? Well, I don't care where you stand on that issue. That's a very leading question. So you need to leave your questions more open-ended, and so they don't take a particular point of view. Give them a chance. Because you're interested in what they think, right? Isn't that the goal of the conversation? Whether you're trying to change their mind or whether you're just conversing. I mean, if you're not interested, why bother talking to them? And that asking questions and listening to their answers, that's going to help you understand where they're coming from. Like I said, that girlfriend who's more weirded out by the fact that they're kissing in public than the fact that it's two men. Or, the person who, the main reason they don't agree with evolution is that they just don't understand it, rather than any kind of particular religious beliefs. I actually have, I think in the last video I mentioned a conversation with a preacher around here about evolution. Well, I actually had a very good conversation with a Seventh-day Adventist pastor about evolution. Now, I don't think he believes in evolution either. But instead of trying to convince me the way this other one was, who was not Seventh-day Adventist, by the way, he was just kind of, I don't know what, something else. It's not mainline. Anyway, or not Seventh-day Adventist, I apologize. What is he? Okay, the name of the church isn't coming to me, but it doesn't matter. The point is, it's a more well-known denomination. Anyway, so he started asking me, are my daughters more evolved than me? So he was trying to understand where I was coming from on evolution. So I was on the receiving end of this. He was actually listening to me. And he was asking probing questions about, so you're saying life came from nothing? And I was just like, well, no, evolution isn't about that. Evolution is about one form of life turning into another over time. We constantly evolving in higher forms of life. And I don't want to go through the whole conversation with you because that'd be boring, but my point is he actually was listening to me. And I was listening to him. We were actually able to have a discussion, come away probably not agreeing with each other, but understanding each other. I mean, he came away saying, oh, yeah, a couple of what I've been saying evolution is wrong. And I was able to come away saying, okay, he's not totally ignorant. He wants to understand. He just has trouble with where this evolution thing conflicts with the Bible. And that's a lot more useful. Now, if I would have immediately said, look, you ignorant religious moron, well, conversation would have been done there. So, listen. Same thing if he would have said, hey, you heathen, you Presbyterian, that's hardly call them Christian because, they're so darn liberal. He's didn't do that. We actually had a conversation. And, stay on topic, and let the conversation evolve naturally and so on. But the probing questions, the vocabulary, paraphrasing, repeat what they've said to them in your own words. And actually, while they're talking, hear their words, which really takes practice. Because right now I've been talking for 17.1 minutes. I'm going to scream now. Ah! Did that scream startle you? Did you hear me say right before it, I'm going to scream now? That didn't work out quite as smoothly as I thought it would. But my point there was to catch people who may have been drifting and not totally paying attention to me. Because this is not a conversation. This is a one-way deal. I'm talking to you and you're hearing, possibly listening. Let me pause here because I just 17.6 minutes. I'm going to head off here on a slightly different tack. I got up, walked around. I just needed to. I teach high school, so that means I deal daily with teenagers. I actually used to be a teenager. Imagine that. And one of the things I learned as a teenager is my parents always think they know better than me. Now, as a 41-year-old man, I know that a lot of times they did. I also know sometimes that they would just spout off to make themselves feel better. And I learned that as a teenager too, because I learned how to let them spout off and just go, And I'm sure you've seen that with teenagers, the glossy-eyed, they're not listening, the mouth open, kind of slack-jawed. They're just waiting for you to stop so that they can go on with their day. Like every time I would drive, I would get a speech about deer, seatbelts, be careful, watch out for other cars on the road. And first I tried arguing. Yeah, I know, Mom, I know. And then she'd get mad. I'd get mad. We'd start yelling at each other. Eventually I learned, just shut up. Let her say her thing because she's not going to stop anyway. And who cares? And you want to be careful that you don't become that person that they're just ignoring. Now, there's going to be a certain amount of that where they're just going to ignore you just because you're you. But something you hear all the time, you start to block out. Have you ever known somebody who nags? That constant harping on every little thing. Pretty soon you're just like, yeah, whatever. And that's not the effect they're looking for, but that's the effect they've caused because you've shut them out because, oh my God, it's the same thing over and over again, just shut up. And you don't want to become that person. Are you That's another reason to listen more than you talk. Um, you don't want to be the one that they're shutting out. Now, if it's somebody you've just met, that's a lot less likely. But there are certain things that you might shut them out right away. I mean, if somebody comes up to me and says, God loves you, we're done. I'm not listening to what you have to say. Because first, how do you know I believe in that same God as you do? How do you know that he loves me? How do you know I'm not some kind of a Satanist or something? There's so many things, and yeah. And anyway, so you want to be careful of being that person. And part of it, you notice how I've been talking and I even had to take a break from my own talking. This video is now at 21.03 minutes, sorry. If this was real life and not a video, I've been talking way too long. One person should not be monopolizing the conversation. And you need to be really careful that people don't block you out. Let me give you an example. As a teacher, have you ever taught a really tough class? And if you're not a teacher, just use your imagination. One of the things with these tougher classes, they're used to getting yelled at. There are some classes, if I were to raise my voice, I would just crush their little souls, and they'd just all be like, and there's other classes like, oh, yeah, yelling again, and they know how to block it out. They just don't care. There's a lot of ways we can get the other person to block us out. This is a video on listening. Let's flip that around. Are you blocking them out? Because they're talking about their religious beliefs, you just shut down because you don't care. Or they're talking about economics, you don't care. That's something you really need to be careful of. It's not just you not being listened to, it's you not listening. And so I presented it to you from the other point of view, because we get more annoyed when other people aren't listening to us. You're a teacher and you look out and there's some kid doodling in his notebook instead of paying attention. Or you're a preacher and you look out and there's a little old lady texting her boyfriend on her cell phone. And you're just like, I'm giving a sermon here. Now I probably should put a footnote, but I'm not going to. There's a video out there about some southern preacher who suddenly, they film every service, I guess, who just suddenly goes ballistic at his congregation and starts calling out people by name for various things because he's annoyed that they're not all worked up and not all listening to him the way they're supposed to be. We like to be listened to. It's a lot harder to listen, especially if you're not interested or they're boring. And that's why I advise, if you're listening to this advice, you're having a conversation with somebody. It's not a monologue. And here's another little piece about listening. Don't just listen to the words they say. Listen to how they say them. Watch their body language. There's a big difference between, oh, I love church. Yeah, I love church. Oh, I love church! I'm not an actor, so bear with me there. But the first one was meant to be sarcastic. The next one was meant to be an I don't care. The third one was meant to be I'm really excited about church. Take me there every day and maybe in the mornings too. If their arms are crossed, that's body language for I'm not listening. It may also be body language for I really need to sit down and I'm just kind of resting here. So if they're not comfortable, that whole slack-jawed expression I talked about with teenagers, the one I used to give my parents, and still do sometimes when they try pulling that stuff on me at 41. That's body language to pay attention to. Are they making eye contact? No, keep in mind culture. Some cultures are more eye eye contacty than others. But, and again, that free exchange. It's not just you interrogating or you monologuing about why they're wrong and them trying to defend themselves. It's you genuinely asking because you want to know why they think that. Because hell, they may convince you. Isn't that awesome when it happens? When you talk to somebody and boof, it's like a light comes on and you're like, holy cow, I see the world in a totally different way in this issue. That's kind of exciting. I mean, I'd love that if more conversations were like that. It's just like a whole world is illuminated to you that you never thought about before. And that really would want to be your goal. Appropriate time to bring up another one, because I'm feeling it with this video. Know when you're done. I've said about all I can say about listening. I mean, I could probably make some stuff up. I could babble more. But you can hear it in my voice. I'm drying up on the topic. And you should know when the topic has been beat to death and it's time to move on to something else. And that is an important piece of listening. If you're like me, after a while, you just need to process. And you need to give people that time. Whether you're trying to convince them or whether you're just conversing with them. If I'm socializing with somebody in the car, not that we consciously do it, but typically it's a mix of like heavy topics and light topics. You know, the light topics are like processing time and whatever. It's kind of that human instinct. So I'm done with the heavy. Let's do something light and fluffy. I'll tell you why I said Seventh-day Adventist. There's a Seventh-day Adventist Academy. We may actually be past it. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to the road too much. Oops, excuse me. But there is a Seventh-day Adventist Academy along here. It's a private school, and I believe it's a residential school. I know I had a student once who was going to school here and came to school at my town just for like a semester. And so I believe it's like a boarding school, but don't take me for 100% because I might be wrong. But it's up high on a hill. And I know there was a group of people walking near that academy. Like I said, I can't remember if we're past it or not because I've actually filmed the audio for this twice. The first time I filmed it, I made the mistake of going the entire 44 seconds talking about listening and basically repeating myself. So let's talk a little bit about this road, what makes it kind of fun. I like it just because it's windy and goes through the country. If I took Highway 83 to Bismarck, that's a lot more direct. And it is actually pretty rural, but not as windy. It's just not as interesting. When I used to live up in Turtle Lake, I'll tell you what I used to do. To get to Bismarck, I'd drive over to Mercer, North Dakota, and then drive south. I can't remember the number on the road anymore. But anyway, I would come out in Wilton, North Dakota, and then I would take 83 the rest of the way down to Bismarck. When I came home, although this made sense actually, I'd come up Highway 83 to Washburn. Then in Washburn there's a road called Alternate 200, which I would take up to, it didn't come out in Turtle Lake, but it came out kind of near Turtle Lake. It was a way to actually shave a whole bunch of miles off of the trip. And then I, would go the rest of the way into Turtle Lake. So, yeah, I liked Turtle Lake. That's a nice little town. It's little. It's kind of one of those towns you don't visit unless you are visiting Turtle Lake. It's not really on the way to anywhere. It's just kind of off on its own. But it had, I don't know what it's like now. It's been a few years since I've been there. But at the time, it had a full main street. Hardware store, grocery store, drugstore, barber, newspaper. I forget what all was in there. Restaurants, a couple of them. Nothing amazing. But everything was there and you could walk to it. Even had a hospital at that time, which I do believe is actually still open. So I liked Turtle Lake. I had reasons for leaving there, which I'll have to get into in a video someday, but not this one. I'm light and fluffy today. But one of the things I liked Turtle Lake is I could drive down to Bismarck, about an hour. I could drive north to Minot, about an hour. So there were two fairly sizable cities within an hour driving distance. And that is something I miss now that I'm living in southwestern North Dakota, because the closest thing is smaller than either one of them, and that's Dickinson, North Dakota, which is about 90 miles away. Or I could drive down to Spearfish, South Dakota, which is a little smaller than Dickinson, but has a nicer downtown. That's probably about 2 hours away or so. Or 3 hours, I could get to Rapid City, but then 3 hours also gets me to Bismarck, so horse apiece, I guess. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this trip down Highway 1804. Somewhere here, I don't recall exactly where because I wasn't paying attention. I got off Highway 1804. I'm going to join up here pretty darn quick with Highway 83. And I will tell you, when I moved to North Dakota, you see all these houses around me? Almost none of them were there. So in the next video, I will show you kind of where Bismarck started. Bismarck has grown a lot since I moved to this state. It has really spread north. They've added a high school that wasn't there when I started living in North Dakota. How long has it been? Well, not even sure how long I've lived in North Dakota. 17, 18 years maybe? It's been a while. So, anyway, I just, to wrap it all up into a nice, neat bundle, because we're coming up on the highway, listening is an active process. Paraphrase and repeat what you hear. Ask questions. Make sure you're using the same vocabulary. Make sure you actually understand the person. You're not just waiting to pounce on them with your own superior argument. And I hope that goes a long way toward facilitating all of your conversations, not just ones where you're trying to convince somebody. So headed south on 83, headed into the big city of Bismarck, North Dakota. So I'll pick you up here next week, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.